The storm had been relentless, its fury battering the rescue vessel as it navigated the treacherous waves of the Atlantic Ocean. Captain Daniels, a seasoned sailor with decades of experience, gripped the wheel with determination. The wind howled, and rain pounded against the windows of the bridge, obscuring the crew's vision. The radio crackled with static, and the distress signal that had led them into the heart of the storm continued to echo through the cabin. "Captain, I've got something on radar," First Mate Collins shouted over the roar of the storm. He pointed to the screen where a large stationary object appeared. "It's a ship, sir, and it's not responding to our hails." Captain Daniels squinted through the rain-splattered glass, trying to make out the shape in the distance. As lightning illuminated the sky, the silhouette of a massive cargo vessel emerged from the darkness. The ship was adrift, its ghostly outline contrasting sharply with the turbulent sea. "Prepare to board," Captain Daniels ordered, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. The crew of 6 readied themselves, donning rain gear and securing ropes. The rescue vessel cautiously approached the derelict ship, the name Atlantic Voyager, becoming visible on its rusted hull. It was an old cargo vessel, its exterior marred by years of exposure to the elements. As they pulled alongside the Atlantic Voyager, the rescue team noticed an eerie silence. There were no signs of life, no movement on the deck. The ship's gangway hung loosely, swaying with the motion of the sea. Captain Daniels led the way, his flashlight cutting through the gloom as he climbed aboard, followed closely by First Mate Collins, Engineer Harris, Medic Dr. Morgan, and deckhands Ryan and Alex. Once on deck, the team fanned out, their flashlights casting long shadows on the wet, slick surfaces. The air was thick with an unexplainable sense of dread, and the ship creaked ominously as if protesting their presence. They found signs of a struggle. Overturned crates, scattered belongings, and ominous dark stains on the deck that looked suspiciously like dried blood. "What happened here?" Ryan muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. He shone his flashlight into the darkness, half expecting to see something or someone staring back at him. Dr. Morgan, ever the skeptic, knelt beside one of the stains. "Blood," she confirmed, her tone clinical. "But it's old. Whatever happened, it wasn't recent." Captain Daniels nodded grimly. "We need to find the ship's log and any other clues that can tell us what happened to the crew." The team split into pairs to cover more ground. Collins and Ryan took the upper decks, exploring the bridge and crew quarters. Captain Daniels and Alex headed for the cargo hold, while Harris and Dr. Morgan made their way to the engine room. Collins and Ryan climbed the stairs to the bridge, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. The bridge was a chaotic mess, with charts and navigational tools strewn about. The logbook lay open on the captain's desk, its pages smeared with ink, and the final entry a frantic, illegible scrawl. "Looks like they were in a hurry," Collins observed, picking up the logbook. "But why?" Ryan, his nerves on edge, peered out the window at the dark sea. "I don't know, but I've got a bad feeling about this place." Meanwhile, Captain Daniels and Alex descended into the cargo hold, their flashlights revealing rows of crates stacked haphazardly. The cargo hold was cavernous, the smell of salt and decay hanging in the air. They found the ship's main cargo, crates filled with artifacts from an archaeological dig, their ancient origins betrayed by the dust and cobwebs that clung to them. Some of the crates were broken open, and the relics inside, statues, pottery, and other items, were scattered across the floor. "What are these?" Alex asked, picking up a small, intricately carved idol. "These look valuable." Captain Daniels frowned. "Artifacts. But why would a cargo ship be carrying these?" In the engine room, Harris and Dr. Morgan faced a different kind of mystery. The machinery was intact, but had been deliberately sabotaged. Harris inspected the damage, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Someone didn't want this ship to go anywhere," he concluded. Dr. Morgan, standing guard, felt a chill run down her spine. She glanced around nervously, convinced she had seen a shadow move out of the corner of her eye. "Harris, do you hear that?" she whispered. Harris paused, listening. The faint sound of footsteps echoed through the metal corridors, but there was no one else around. "Yeah," he said, his voice tense. "We're not alone." As night fell, the team reconvened in the ship's mess hall, sharing their findings. The unsettling silence of the Atlantic Voyager was now filled with whispers and fleeting apparitions, as if the very air was alive with restless spirits. The rescue team couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the ship itself was aware of their presence. Captain Daniels spread out the logbook and other documents they had found on the table. "Something happened to this crew," he said, his voice low. "And whatever it wasn't natural. We need to be careful. This ship is hiding something, and we need to find out what." The team nodded in agreement, their resolve hardening despite the growing fear. They were trapped on a ghost ship, and its secrets were beginning to reveal themselves. Little did they know, their presence had awakened something ancient and malevolent, and their night of discovery was only just beginning. First, Mate Collins and Ryan took the upper decks, beginning their exploration with the bridge and crew quarters. The bridge was a chaotic mess, with charts, navigational tools, and personal belongings strewn about. Dust covered every surface, indicating that the ship had been abandoned for some time. Collins picked up the ship's logbook, which lay open on the captain's desk. The final entries were a desperate, frantic scrawl, detailing the crew's increasing paranoia and fear. "It's like they went mad," Collins murmured, flipping through the pages. "They talk about seeing things, hearing whispers." Ryan, standing by the bridge's large windows, stared out into the darkness. The storm had passed, leaving a thick fog in its wake. "Maybe they weren't just imagining things," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I keep feeling like we're being watched." As they continued their search, they heard footsteps echoing down the corridor. They called out, but no one responded. The sound grew louder, closer, and then suddenly stopped. Ryan shone his flashlight down the hallway, the beam cutting through the darkness, but there was nothing there. "Let's keep moving," Collins said, trying to maintain his composure. "We need to check the crew quarters." The crew quarters were equally disarrayed. Bunk beds were overturned, personal effects scattered across the floor. They found more signs of a struggle, scratches on the walls, bloodstains, and broken furniture. As they searched the rooms, they began to see fleeting apparitions, ghostly figures of crew members, their faces twisted in anguish. "Did you see that?" Ryan asked, his voice trembling. He pointed to a shadowy figure that had just disappeared around a corner. Collins nodded, his face pale. "Let's stay together. We need to find out what happened here." Meanwhile, Captain Daniels and Alex ventured into the cargo hold. The air was thick with the smell of salt and decay, and their flashlights revealed rows of crates stacked haphazardly. The main cargo consisted of artifacts from an archaeological dig, their ancient origins betrayed by the dust and cobwebs that clung to them. Some crates were broken open, and the relics inside, statues, pottery, and other items, were scattered across the floor. "These look like they're from some ancient civilization," Alex said, examining a small, intricately carved idol. "Why would a cargo ship be carrying these?" Captain Daniels frowned, picking up an old journal that lay amid the debris. "Artifacts like these usually belong in a museum, not on a cargo ship. There's something we're missing." As they continued to explore the cargo hold, they felt an oppressive presence. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to move on their own. Captain Daniels glanced at Alex, who was visibly shaking. "Stay close," he instructed. "We don't know what's down here." In the engine room, Harris and Dr. Morgan were facing their own mysteries. The machinery, although intact, had been deliberately sabotaged. Wires were cut, gears jammed, and fuel lines severed. Harris inspected the damage, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Someone didn't want this ship to go anywhere," he concluded. "This was done intentionally." Dr. Morgan, standing guard, felt a chill run down her spine. She glanced around nervously, convinced she had seen a shadow move out of the corner of her eye. "Harris, do you hear that?" she whispered. Harris paused, listening. The faint sound of footsteps echoed through the metal corridors, but there was no one else around. "Yeah," he said, his voice tense. "We're not alone." As they worked to understand the sabotage, the temperature in the engine room plummeted. Their breath formed misty clouds in the cold air. Harris felt a tap on his shoulder and turned quickly, expecting to see Dr. Morgan. Instead, he saw the translucent figure of a crew member, his eyes wide with terror. "Dr. Morgan, look!" Harris exclaimed, pointing at the apparition. But as soon as she turned, the figure vanished, leaving behind only the lingering chill. "We need to regroup with the others," Dr. Morgan said, her skepticism giving way to fear. "Something is very wrong here." As night fell, the encounters grew more frequent and terrifying. Collins and Ryan continued to hear whispers and see fleeting apparitions of crew members, their faces twisted in anguish. In the cargo hold, Captain Daniels and Alex felt the oppressive presence intensify, as if the relics themselves were alive. Harris and Dr. Morgan were haunted by the sound of machinery turning on and off by itself, as if manipulated by unseen hands. The spirits of the crew were restless, trapped between the living and the dead. They began to appear more frequently, their translucent forms flickering like candle flames. They whispered of betrayal, of a curse brought on board by the artifacts, and of their desire to escape their eternal torment. The rescue team regrouped in the ship's mess hall, sharing their experiences. Captain Daniels, his face pale and drawn, revealed the journal he had found in the captain's quarters. The journal belonged to Captain Harris of the Atlantic Voyager and detailed a harrowing tale of the ship's final days. According to the journal, the crew had discovered the artifacts during a routine cargo run. Among the relics was an ancient idol said to be cursed. Soon after bringing the idol on board, strange and terrifying events began to unfold. Crew members reported nightmares, hallucinations, and an overwhelming sense of dread. The journal entries became increasingly erratic, detailing the crew's descent into madness and paranoia. Captain Harris wrote of a mutiny, driven by fear and desperation. The crew turned on each other, believing the idol to be the source of their torment. The final entry was a frantic plea for help, as Captain Harris realized the true nature of the curse. The spirits of those who died on the ship were bound to it, unable to move on to the afterlife. The rescue team realized they were dealing with a powerful and malevolent force. They knew they had to find the cursed idol and remove it from the ship if they had any hope of escaping. But the spirits were growing more aggressive, their desperation palpable. They didn't want to harm the rescue team. They wanted to be freed. The team decided to split up once more to locate the idol. Armed with newfound determination and a growing sense of dread, they ventured into the ship's darkest corners. The spirits guided them, their whispers growing louder and more urgent. The Atlantic Voyager's true horror was beginning to reveal itself, and the rescue team was caught in a struggle between life and death. Determined to uncover the truth, the rescue team regrouped in the ship's mess hall, their faces drawn and eyes wide with fear. The room was dimly lit by flickering lanterns, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The air was thick with tension as Captain Daniels spread out the journal and other documents they had found on a battered table. "Listen up, everyone," he began, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his insides. "We've got to figure out what happened here and how to stop it. The ship's log and this journal give us some clues." He opened the journal, its pages brittle and yellowed with age. The handwriting was frantic and nearly illegible towards the end. "This journal belonged to Captain Harris," Daniels continued. "It tells the story of the Atlantic Voyager's final days. The crew found these artifacts during a cargo run, including an ancient idol believed to be cursed." Dr. Morgan leaned in, her scientific skepticism wavering in the face of mounting evidence. "Cursed? Like some kind of superstition?" "Not just superstition," Daniels replied, shaking his head. "The journal describes how the crew started experiencing nightmares, hallucinations, and a pervasive sense of dread after bringing the idol on board. They believed the idol was the source of their torment." He pointed to a particularly erratic entry, the ink smudged and the handwriting shaky. "This entry talks about a mutiny. The crew turned on each other, driven mad by fear. Captain Harris realized too late that the idol was cursed, and that the spirits of those who died on the ship were bound to it, unable to move on to the afterlife." The room fell silent as the team absorbed the gravity of the situation. The spirits of the crew had been trapped on the Atlantic Voyager for years, tormented by the curse they had unwittingly unleashed. The rescue team realized they were dealing with a powerful and malevolent force, and their own lives were now in grave danger. "We need to find that idol," Daniel said, his voice resolute. "It's the key to all of this. If we can remove it from the ship, maybe we can break the curse and free the spirits." "But where do we even start?" Ryan asked, his voice tinged with desperation. "This ship is massive, and it's like a maze down there." "The spirits are trying to communicate with us," Dr. Morgan interjected. "They've been guiding us, showing us glimpses of what happened. We need to pay attention to the signs." Harris nodded in agreement. In the engine room, I saw a shadowy figure pointing towards the cargo hold. Maybe that's where we'll find the idol. With renewed determination, the team split up once more to search the ship. Captain Daniels and Alex headed for the cargo hold, while Collins and Ryan took the upper decks, and Harris and Dr. Morgan returned to the engine room to look for more clues. Captain Daniels and Alex descended into the cargo hold, their flashlights piercing the darkness. The air was thick with the smell of salt and decay, and the oppressive sense of dread grew stronger with each step. They moved cautiously, aware that the spirits were watching them. As they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, they heard whispers growing louder, guiding them towards a particular section of the hold. The crates here were different, older, more worn. They found a large crate, its lid ajar, and inside it, the idol. The idol was grotesque, carved from dark, polished stone. Its eyes seemed to glint with a malevolent light, and a sense of malevolence emanated from it. Captain Daniels reached out to touch it, but the air around it grew colder, and the spirits of the crew appeared, their forms more solid and terrifying than before. "Captain Harris," Daniels whispered, recognizing the ghostly figure at the forefront. The spirit's eyes were filled with a mix of anger and sorrow. "You must destroy it," the ghostly captain intoned, his voice echoing with the pain of countless souls. "It binds us here. Free us from this torment." Meanwhile, on the upper decks, Collins and Ryan faced their own horrors. As they searched the crew quarters for more clues, they were confronted by the ghosts of crew members, their faces twisted in agony. The apparitions grew more aggressive, lashing out in desperation. Ryan stumbled backwards, his flashlight flickering. "We need to get out of here," he yelled, panic rising in his voice. "No," Collins replied firmly, grabbing Ryan's arm. "We need to find that idol and help Captain Daniels. It's the only way to stop this." In the engine room, Harris and Dr. Morgan uncovered more evidence of the crew's desperation. They found tools and parts scattered around, as if someone had been trying to repair the damage in a hurry. The machinery creaked and groaned, and they felt the presence of the spirits all around them. "Harris, over here!" Dr. Morgan called, pointing to a makeshift shrine in a corner. It was adorned with trinkets and mementos, offerings from the crew to appease the spirits. At the center was a small carved stone, similar in style to the idol in the cargo hold. "This must be connected to the curse," Harris said, examining the stone. The crew was trying to protect themselves. As they stood up, the temperature dropped further, and the spirit of an engineer appeared before them, his eyes filled with sorrow. "Help us," the ghostly figure pleaded. "Free us from this nightmare." Back in the cargo hold, Captain Daniels and Alex faced the final confrontation. The spirits of the crew surrounded them, their forms flickering like candle flames. The air crackled with energy as Daniels raised the idol above his head. "We're going to end this," Daniels declared, his voice unwavering. With all his strength, he brought the idol down on the metal floor, shattering it into pieces. A wave of energy surged through the ship, knocking them off their feet. The spirits cried out, their forms dissolving into the ether. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and a sense of peace washed over the Atlantic Voyager. The team, battered but alive, regrouped on the deck. The ship was now devoid of its ghostly inhabitants, its secrets finally laid to rest. Captain Daniels signaled for their rescue vessel, knowing they had succeeded in their mission. As they sailed away, the team couldn't shake the feeling that they had witnessed something extraordinary. They had confronted the supernatural and emerged victorious. But the memory of the ghostly crew, their tortured souls now at peace, would stay with them forever. The Atlantic Voyager drifted into the distance, a silent sentinel of the ocean, its secrets finally at rest. The rescue team knew they had not only saved themselves, but also freed the spirits from eternal torment. Their encounter with the ghost ship would remain a haunting reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead. The team stood on the deck of the Atlantic Voyager, the tension slowly ebbing away. The air was clear, the oppressive atmosphere that had plagued the ship now gone. The spirits were at peace, their tormented cries silenced. Captain Daniels surveyed his crew, their faces etched with relief and exhaustion. They had survived a night of terror, but the experience had left an indelible mark on each of them. "Let's get back to our vessel," Daniels said, his voice steady but tired. "We need to report what happened here." The rescue team climbed down the gangway and boarded their rescue vessel, grateful to be leaving the ghost ship behind. The sky was beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn, casting a soft glow over the ocean. As they pulled away, the Atlantic Voyager loomed in the distance, its secrets finally laid to rest. On the rescue vessel, the team gathered in the small cabin, the adrenaline of the night giving way to exhaustion. Dr. Morgan began tending to minor injuries, while Harris worked on repairing the damaged radio to send a distress signal. "We need to document everything," Collins said, opening his notebook. "No one's going to believe this unless we have a detailed report." Ryan, still shaken, nodded. "I saw things I can't explain. I never believed in ghosts, but now, I don't know." Captain Daniels sat down heavily, rubbing his temples. "We've all seen things tonight that defy explanation, but we have to make sure the authorities know what happened here. The Atlantic Voyager needs to be properly investigated." As the rescue vessel navigated the calm waters, they managed to get the radio working. Harris sent out a distress signal, and within hours they were met by a Coast Guard ship. The team was taken aboard, where they gave their accounts of the night's events to the commanding officer. "We encountered something beyond our understanding," Captain Daniels said, his voice firm despite the fatigue. "The Atlantic Voyager was cursed by an ancient idol, and the spirits of the crew were trapped on the ship. We destroyed the idol, and the spirits were freed." The commanding officer listened intently, his expression serious. "We'll send a team to investigate the Atlantic Voyager. Your reports will be crucial in understanding what happened." Back on land, the rescue team was debriefed and given medical examinations. They were hailed as heroes for their bravery, but each member knew that the true horror of the night would stay with them forever. They returned to their respective lives, trying to find normalcy after such a harrowing experience. Weeks later, Captain Daniels received a letter from the Coast Guard. The investigation of the Atlantic Voyager had confirmed the presence of the artifacts and the sabotage in the engine room. However, there was no sign of the spirits or the supernatural occurrences described by the rescue team. The authorities were skeptical, but could not ignore the evidence of the crew's tragic fate. Daniels gathered his team to share the news. They met at a small diner near the docks, a place they frequented before the rescue mission, that had changed their lives. The investigation confirmed what we found, Daniels said, placing the letter on the table. But they didn't encounter the spirits. They think it was all due to the psychological effects of the isolation and the artifact's history. Collins shook his head. We know what we saw. We know the truth. Ryan, still haunted by the memories, added, They may not believe us, but we did the right thing. We freed those souls. Dr. Morgan, who had always been the skeptic, nodded slowly. I came into this as a scientist, but there are things in this world we can't explain. We have to accept that. As they sat together, they found solace in each other's company. They had faced the unknown and survived, their bond strengthened by the shared ordeal. The experience had changed them, but it had also brought them closer. The Atlantic Voyager remained adrift, a ghost ship in every sense of the word. Its story became a legend among sailors and coast guards, a cautionary tale about the dangers lurking beneath the surface of the sea. The rescue team knew that the spirits they had encountered were finally at peace, their torment ended by the destruction of the cursed idol. In the end, the rescue team continued their work, driven by a newfound understanding of the thin veil between the living and the dead. They carried with them the memory of the Atlantic Voyager, a reminder of the night they had faced the supernatural and emerged victorious. Their story would be told and retold, a testament to their courage and the enduring mystery of the ghost ship.